the alien scout squad assembled, waiting for the captain's briefing. Each member was seasoned in their role, accustomed to intergalactic reconnaissance, but this mission held an unusual tension. The captain, known for his blunt assessments, looked at them with a hard stare, knowing they had never faced anything quite like human territory. He gave a stark warning. This was a journey from which they were unlikely to return. He laid out the scope of the mission, emphasizing the mysterious dangers associated with humanity. His warning wasn't casual. He had seen reports from previous encounters, tales from other squads who had underestimated the humans and never returned. Unlike the familiar challenges they faced in other territories, human space was unpredictable. Its inhabitants, though relatively new to the galactic stage, had a reputation for surprising resilience and unorthodox methods that made even the most seasoned alien commanders wary. The captain explained that humanity didn't rely solely on advanced technology or sheer numbers, but had a knack for resourcefulness that turned seemingly ordinary situations into traps for their enemies. Several of the younger members exchanged skeptical glances, viewing humans as a lesser species, unlikely to pose a real threat. One even commented that Earth was far behind the other galactic powers in technology and resources. But the captain silenced them, reiterating that human territory had claimed far more experienced forces than theirs. Overconfidence would be their greatest risk here. He reminded them that, while other species played by known rules, humans often invented their own, breaking conventions and employing tactics that defied conventional logic. Human territory was not just space to be navigated, it was a carefully guarded domain, unpredictable and laced with subtle defenses that were difficult to detect. He explained the initial objective: conduct reconnaissance, assess human capabilities, and gather intelligence on any new technologies they might be developing. However, under no circumstances were they to engage with human forces or reveal their presence unless absolutely necessary. The captain knew that any encounter with humans could trigger a series of events beyond their control, with human responses being erratic and difficult to counter. Even a minor mistake could expose them to dangers that would nullify any chance of success or survival. Their equipment was top of the line, outfitted for deep space infiltration. Yet the captain's demeanor hinted that even their advanced technology might not guarantee safety. He had instructed them to prepare not just for combat but for psychological endurance, as human defenses often included methods that affected both the mind and morale. Psychological warfare, he warned, was a tactic humans wielded effectively, even without sophisticated equipment. The stories of intercepted human broadcasts and misdirections had circulated through alien networks, each recounting how these tactics broke the spirit of those unprepared for such encounters. As the briefing continued, he made it clear that this mission required absolute vigilance. They would be navigating regions filled with interference, possibly intended to cloak human activity or mislead intruders. Scanners and systems that function flawlessly elsewhere would likely encounter distortions and blind spots within human-controlled space. The captain instructed them to rely not only on their instruments, but on each other's instincts and observations. Standard protocols would need to be adapted on the fly. Rigid plans would only hinder their survival. He recalled tales of alien ships that had ventured too close, confident in their firepower and advanced systems, only to disappear without a trace. Human space, he explained, was layered with strategic points designed to isolate intruders, separate them from their reinforcements, and disrupt communication. Even their most advanced navigation technology might be compromised. He emphasized that humans had mastered using environmental factors to their advantage, often turning asteroid fields, magnetic storms, and other natural phenomena into barriers against any approaching force. The squad began to grasp the weight of the mission. The captain's warnings painted human space not as a destination but as a domain where every step would be met with unseen risks. His final instruction was to avoid drawing attention, as humans were quick to detect intruders and had shown a ruthless efficiency in neutralizing any threats. He reminded them that the goal was not to test their skills against humanity, but to understand this unusual species and return with insights that could benefit their own people. As he dismissed them, the captain gave one final look at his squad. He understood the skepticism in their eyes, the doubt that lingered despite his words. But he knew better than any of them, that once they crossed into human space, they would no longer be in control. The mission required absolute respect for the unknown, for the species that had mastered survival by defying logic and convention. He ended by reminding them that if they failed to heed his warning, they would merely be another squad that disappeared into human territory, reinforcing the very tales he had shared. With a last reminder to stay cautious and avoid assumptions, the squad prepared to embark, each carrying the weight of his words and the awareness that this mission was unlike any they had faced before. The squad crossed the boundary into human space, initially finding it eerily quiet, almost too calm. For a moment, some felt reassured, thinking the captain's warnings were exaggerated. Yet, as they advanced, they started noticing strange anomalies in their systems. Their scanners, usually reliable, flickered with interference, distorting readings and creating false signals that came and went. It was subtle, almost unnoticeable at first, but soon it became apparent that human space didn't operate on the same patterns they were used to. Every assumption they had about typical territory surveillance was put into question. Despite the disturbances, they pressed on, following the captain's directive to maintain stealth and avoid direct engagement. They navigated carefully, adjusting their instruments to try to filter out the interference, but the disturbances persisted, growing more unpredictable with each passing hour. Alien standard protocols relied on clear, consistent signals, and the randomness of these distortions quickly unnerved the squad. Some of the younger soldiers whispered among themselves, attempting to make sense of what they were encountering, but no one had answers. Suddenly, their sensors picked up a foreign vessel on the edge of their detection range. It was a human patrol ship, though smaller and less imposing than the alien ships. The squad prepared to avoid detection, adjusting their cloaking mechanisms and rerouting their path. Yet, just as they altered course, the human ship vanished from their sensors as quickly as it had appeared, as if it had detected them and retreated out of sight. Confusion spread among the squad members. They hadn't experienced such tactics before. In most alien encounters, vessels would engage or flee, but humans seemed to move with an unpredictable strategy that eluded typical detection methods. Attempting to proceed, they soon realized that the humans had likely been aware of them from the start. The environment became a labyrinth of unpredictable obstacles. Fields of magnetic interference forced them to change course repeatedly, as if they were being herded, funneled through specific routes where they had little control over their path. Every route they took seemed to lead them deeper into a region of space with progressively stronger distortions. The captain, now more alert than ever, ordered the squad to remain calm and follow his instructions, yet even he was beginning to see that their standard evasive protocols were ineffective here. At one point, they intercepted a signal, a human broadcast that seemed almost directed toward them, taunting in tone but vague enough to remain unsettling. It contained phrases in various languages, many of which the aliens did not fully understand, yet the underlying message was clear. They were being watched. The broadcast cut out suddenly, leaving a haunting silence, and the squad was left more shaken than before. They realized that human tactics went beyond mere defense. They incorporated psychological elements, making each step within human territory feel like a calculated, controlled experience. The younger squad members grew anxious, realizing the captain's warning was no exaggeration. The captain, determined to press forward, ordered the squad to scan for any nearby installations. If they could locate a base, they might be able to gather the intelligence they were sent for and retreat before human forces fully mobilized. After several tense minutes, they identified a faint energy signature that appeared to be a human outpost. Proceeding with extreme caution, they moved toward the source, attempting to maintain cloaking and minimize any emissions that might reveal their position. As they approached, they began to understand that this outpost was no ordinary installation. It was fortified with defensive measures unlike anything they had encountered, including sensor fields that seemed to detect cloaked vessels. Their readings showed strange energy patterns, indicating that the outpost was actively scanning for intruders and possibly adapting to counter their stealth technology. Every attempt to get closer triggered subtle warnings on their systems, as if the outpost was one step ahead of their approach. The squad had prepared for complex defenses, but the scope of what they observed was unsettlingly intricate. With each move they made, it became clear that humans had anticipated scenarios like this. The squad's technology was advanced, yet it struggled to adapt to the constant adjustments required to counter human defenses. Every approach angle seemed to lead to a dead end, as the humans had set up decoys, false entry points, and energy traps that misled the squad's sensors. Frustrated, the captain ordered a temporary retreat to analyze their findings and devise a new strategy. He realized that even their advanced equipment was being outwitted by the humans' unconventional setup. Retreating to a safer distance, the squad took stock of their situation. What they had thought would be a simple reconnaissance mission was now a test of endurance and wits. Their communication systems, designed to be secure, began showing signs of external interference, as though humans were actively monitoring and intercepting their signals. They scrambled to secure their transmissions, but the realization settled in. They were operating in an environment where every action was anticipated and countered. Anxiety spread as their confidence eroded. Some among them began to question the mission's feasibility. If humanity's territory was this difficult to navigate, what else might be waiting deeper within? The captain, though silent, felt the weight of his responsibility. He had warned them, and now they were experiencing the consequences of stepping into a territory that operated under rules they couldn't fully understand. Acknowledging the gravity of their situation, the captain ordered a strategic regroup. He knew they had to rethink their approach entirely. The squad, though shaken, followed his orders, their initial skepticism now replaced by a sobering respect for the threat human territory posed. The squad, having retreated to a safer distance, regrouped to devise a new strategy for navigating human space. They now understood that their standard protocols were failing and that human defenses were more intricate than they had imagined. The captain analyzed their observations, piecing together a pattern from the strange energy readings, the intermittent sensor disruptions, and the eerie broadcasts. Humans were actively manipulating their environment, turning it into an elaborate maze designed to confuse and entrap any intruders. The realization weighed heavily on the squad, reinforcing the captain's earlier warnings about human unpredictability. Their mission required them to gather intelligence, yet each attempt to approach a human installation had only led them into further traps. The captain made the decision to scan for weaknesses at a distance, using every bit of their advanced equipment to avoid triggering any more human countermeasures. However, as they initiated scans, their systems began to encounter interference that was not random but deliberate, as if the humans were actively blocking them. This tactic was unfamiliar to the squad. Other territories might shield data, but the humans seemed to manipulate the interference to redirect them, making it difficult even to establish a clear scan. Frustration grew as the squad encountered more unexpected defenses. Beyond traditional shields and cloaks, human technology appeared to use natural space phenomena, gravitational anomalies, magnetic fields, and radiation pockets to create a field of deterrence. These defenses were subtle, almost imperceptible, but they affected their equipment, adding another layer of difficulty. The captain had never encountered such an adaptive defensive structure and knew they needed a new approach if they were to achieve any success. For the first time, he considered that retreat might be their only option, yet he hesitated, aware of the mission's importance and the consequences of returning without valuable information. Attempting to proceed, the squad shifted focus to a more covert approach, aiming to gather any intelligence they could without directly interacting with human installations. But even at a distance, they faced hurdles. The humans had placed automated drones in irregular patterns, making it nearly impossible to navigate without risking detection. Unlike the linear patrol routes they had studied in other territories, these drones seemed to respond to subtle changes in the environment, creating an unpredictable net around key installations. Every calculated move the squad made was countered by the drones' erratic patrol patterns, blocking each path they attempted to take. In an effort to understand this pattern, the squad began intercepting signals from the drones, hoping to find some regularity. Yet, even these signals were encrypted in a way that frustrated their code-breaking algorithms. Alien technology excelled at deciphering most forms of communication, but the human signals were layered with deceptive codes, creating false trails and dead-end responses. As the hours wore on, the squad's morale waned, each member beginning to understand that human defenses were as much psychological as they were physical. Their attempts to adapt were met with relentless obstruction, leading them to question if they had underestimated humans altogether. The captain, feeling the squad's mounting unease, called for a momentary halt, instructing them to conserve energy and focus. He knew that this mission was taking a toll, but he couldn't afford to let morale slip further. He reminded them of their purpose, emphasizing the importance of resilience, yet he could see in their eyes that the squad was beginning to lose faith in the mission's feasibility. His own confidence wavered, but he hid it, recognizing the weight of his responsibility to lead and maintain order. Analyzing their equipment, they noticed unexplained fluctuations in power reserves, an anomaly they had initially dismissed as a technical error. But upon closer inspection, they realized that human territory seemed to contain fields that subtly drained energy. This realization added a new layer of urgency to their mission. If their resources continued to deplete at this rate, they would be left vulnerable, unable to escape. The captain knew that a direct exit was out of the question. They needed to conserve power, reassess, and rely on low-energy operations to avoid further losses. Determined to obtain at least some usable data, the squad attempted to conduct passive scans, gathering environmental readings rather than directly probing human technology. This, they hoped, would be less likely to trigger any alarms. But even in this, they found no success. Human space seemed alive with deceptive signals and false energy signatures that led to dead ends. Every reading contradicted the last, creating a chaotic map that resisted any attempts to understand or navigate it. For the first time, the squad fully understood that they were not dealing with random defenses, but a comprehensive system specifically designed to mislead and ensnare. The captain now faced a difficult decision. They had spent hours attempting to collect intelligence with little to show for it, and their situation was becoming critical. Yet the thought of returning empty-handed was unbearable. Weighing their options, he considered one final attempt, pushing his team to their limits to try a different angle. They would need to bypass human outposts entirely and focus on observing smaller, less guarded sectors. If they could isolate a weakness in these peripheral areas, they might gain insight without provoking another trap. However, even this approach soon proved futile. As they tried to analyze one isolated energy source, their systems were hit with a sudden overload, a burst of data that forced them to shut down all non-essential operations. This was a decisive blow, and the squad members realized that any further attempts would only drain their resources further. They had been outmaneuvered at every turn, blocked not just by human technology, but by an entire defensive network designed to overwhelm intruders. The captain finally made the call to retreat. There was no victory to be had here, no glory in pushing further. Humanity's defenses had left them with no choice, forcing them to recognize the boundaries of their capabilities. With their systems barely functioning and their morale drained, the squad prepared to make their way back, defeated but with a newfound respect for a species they had once considered simple. As the squad attempted their retreat, they found that even withdrawal was not straightforward. Human territory seemed to close in around them, with unseen forces subtly guiding their path in unexpected directions. Every attempt to plot a direct course out was met with interference that rerouted their navigation, blocking the escape they so urgently sought. The realization dawned on them that the humans had anticipated this very situation, ensuring that any intruder, once detected, would face a near-impossible path to exit. Their resources, already dwindling from prolonged exposure to energy-draining fields, reached critical levels. Basic systems began to fail, and their cloaking technology grew unstable. The squad's distress heightened, knowing that without cloaking, they would be fully exposed, vulnerable to any remaining human patrols. The alien crew, once confident in their advanced equipment, was now facing the terrifying prospect of being stripped of their technological advantages in the heart of enemy territory. As if responding to their struggles, New human signals began to appear sporadically on their scanners, creating a sense of constant surveillance. The squad members could feel the pressure mounting as each signal forced them to reconsider their route. Every change in direction only led them deeper into the unknown, heightening their sense of being hunted. Human tactics were now painfully clear to them. The humans were not pursuing them directly, but controlling their environment, leaving no clear exit while avoiding direct confrontation. This method drained the squad's confidence further, realizing that the humans had outmaneuvered them on every front. The captain, trying to maintain control, ordered the squad to stay together and move cautiously, but he knew the psychological impact was taking its toll. Doubts spread among the team members as they questioned whether they would make it out. The younger soldiers, who had once dismissed the captain's warnings, now looked to him with apprehension, understanding the full weight of his caution. Despite the captain's attempts to keep them focused, their morale waned. The endless game of cat and mouse, coupled with the unknown variables in human space, was eroding their unity. Soon, they noticed that even their communication systems were starting to fail. Attempts to contact one another across short distances within the squad became unreliable, leaving them unable to coordinate effectively. They began to realize that human territory was affecting not only their physical movement, but also their ability to remain connected as a unit. This breakdown in communication added an isolating effect, making each squad member feel increasingly alone as they navigated through what felt like an invisible maze. The alien technology they once relied on now felt like a hindrance, a burden they could no longer fully trust. As they pushed onward, some members of the squad noticed strange signals that appeared momentarily, then vanished, leaving them uncertain whether they were illusions or traps. These signals toyed with their minds, undermining their sense of reality and control. Paranoia set in, as the team began to suspect that each signal could lead to an ambush or worse. This relentless uncertainty gnawed at their nerves, pushing them to the edge as their judgment grew impaired by fear. What they had once dismissed as human tricks now seemed like calculated psychological warfare designed to erode their resolve. In a moment of clarity, the captain recognized that they could no longer rely on their instruments and technology to guide them. Instead, he instructed the team to navigate by intuition and observation, relying on what little visibility they had rather than complex systems that humans could manipulate. This approach offered slight relief, allowing them to regain a semblance of control. Yet, even this measure was temporary. The pervasive effects of human territory were everywhere, and each step forward felt like a descent into an endless trap. With limited options, the captain focused solely on finding an escape, abandoning the mission's objectives entirely. The squad's desperation grew as they encountered regions where their energy reserves began depleting rapidly. It was as if human territory was designed to exhaust them gradually, using minimal force but maximum psychological impact. The reality of their entrapment became clear. This was not a battlefield in the traditional sense, but an environment crafted to drain and disorient. No matter how far they moved, they felt as if they were merely circling within an invisible cage. Their confidence in their superior technology had blinded them to the subtle, relentless efficiency of humanity's defenses. Fatigue and frustration led to mistakes. A few squad members, panicked and disoriented, broke formation, attempting to find shortcuts to escape. But each one soon returned, forced back by unseen barriers that denied them passage. The realization settled in that any attempt to split up would only worsen their predicament. Together, they were at least able to share some semblance of hope, but apart, they would be defenseless against human tactics that targeted individuals as much as units. The captain, worn by the endless struggle, faced a choice: continue pushing forward blindly or find a place to regroup and reassess their limited options. He knew that each passing moment reduced their chances of survival, but he held on to the hope that somewhere, somehow, there might be a weakness in human territory they hadn't yet discovered. This thin thread of hope kept them moving, despite every indication that they were fighting a losing battle. Each step forward carried a grim awareness of their diminishing odds. Finally, as they attempted yet another course change, the captain faced the bitter truth that their journey was reaching its end. Human territory had outmatched them, not through direct confrontation, but through calculated attrition and psychological pressure. The squad, drained of resources and morale, prepared for the possibility that escape was no longer an option. What had once been a mission of pride and exploration had turned into a sobering lesson in humility, one that the captain knew would stay with them until the last moments of their journey. The squad's final moments were marked by resignation and a quiet, tense acceptance of their fate. They had tried every means of escape, each maneuver countered by invisible barriers and unseen forces within human territory. Now, even their most basic functions were failing, and each member knew that this was no longer a mission to complete, but a survival attempt that was slipping further from their grasp with each passing moment. The captain, weary but determined to maintain control to the end, looked around at his exhausted team, knowing the only option left was to prepare for what seemed inevitable. Realizing they could no longer evade the defenses surrounding them, the captain ordered the squad to send out a final message to their command. They recorded a transmission detailing everything they had encountered, the strange defensive structures, the layers of deception, and the way humans seemed to control their environment with a precision that even the most advanced alien forces could not fully comprehend. This message, he hoped, would serve as a warning for any future missions, a record of their failures and the unexpected capabilities of the humans. It was a last-ditch effort to ensure their experiences would not be in vain. With systems failing, they broadcast the message on every frequency available, hoping at least part of it would break through the interference surrounding them. But even this final attempt was met with silence, as though human territory absorbed their transmission, leaving no trace for it to reach beyond its borders. The message, the captain knew, was likely to go unheard, yet he took some solace in knowing they had made an attempt to inform their people of the truth. As their equipment finally gave out, the squad faced the harsh reality of their isolation. They could no longer rely on their advanced technology, once their greatest asset, now rendered useless within this human-designed maze. Without navigation or communication, their situation grew dire. The captain instructed them to conserve their remaining resources, though he understood that it was more a gesture than a genuine strategy. Each member knew that the humans, unseen and untraceable, had already won, not through combat but through the quiet, relentless erosion of the squad's strength and resolve. The squad members, once proud and confident in their superiority, felt the weight of their failure in silence. Human territory had stripped away every advantage they possessed, leaving them with only the realization that they had been completely outmaneuvered. Their mission, once viewed as routine, had turned into a lesson in humility. The younger soldiers who had scoffed at the captain's warnings now sat in silence, fully grasping the depth of his caution. They understood now that human territory was not something to be taken lightly. It was a force that had reduced them, one of the galaxy's elite squads, to little more than lost wanderers. In the final moments, the captain reflected on humanity's capabilities. They had not faced an enemy that fought with overwhelming power, as they had with other species. Instead, humans had used strategy, anticipation, and patience to turn their territory into an inescapable trap. The humans had never once shown themselves, yet their presence was felt at every step, guiding and blocking the squad with an efficiency that left no room for error. The captain understood now that humans, though underestimated, possessed a different kind of strength, a mastery over their environment that had undone all of the squad's assumptions. As their energy reserves reached critical levels, the captain prepared his squad for the inevitable. They all knew what was coming, and there was little left to say. Each member accepted the futility of further efforts, knowing that their mission would end here, within the boundaries of human space. The captain, with a calm resolve, instructed them to hold formation, to stay together even as their systems failed. In a final act of unity, the squad aligned, silent but steadfast, finding a small measure of dignity in facing the end as a single, unified unit. Before power drained completely, the captain allowed himself a final thought, Perhaps humanity's strength lay not only in their unpredictability, but in their understanding of what it took to protect their territory. Humans had used no advanced weapons, no overwhelming force. Instead, they relied on tactics that anticipated every move, creating an environment that resisted all foreign intrusion. It was a strength that spoke of a profound understanding of their place in the galaxy, a determination to defend what was theirs without ever needing to show themselves. The captain found an unexpected respect for this adversary, one that had defeated them without a single direct engagement. As the last of their power faded, the captain's final message echoed in his mind, unspoken but clear, a warning to any who would attempt to cross into human territory in the future. They had entered with confidence, certain of their superiority, and had been met with a quiet, unyielding resistance that had stripped them of every advantage. The humans had turned their own environment into a weapon, one that required no confrontation to defeat those who underestimated it. In their last moments, the squad sat in silence, accepting the fate they could no longer alter. The humans had outlasted them with a resilience and a strategy that defied all expectations, leaving a final lesson for those who might consider crossing into human space. In the vast, silent stretch of human territory, the squad became another unmarked story, a testament to a force that demanded respect and instilled fear in those who failed to understand it. The captain's final thought was a simple one. Humanity, underestimated, had proven itself far more formidable than any weapon they had ever faced.